Even the most celebrated artists with multi-platinum albums and chart-topping singles can face periods of significant commercial decline. In this video, we'll look at 8 of the biggest artists with back-to-back flop albums. Katy Perry. Katy Perry absolutely dominated the early 2010s, becoming a pop music icon after countless #1 songs from her 2010 album Teenage Dream and her 2013 album Prism. However, by the time her 5th studio album Witness came in 2017, the commercial dip was evident. Though it still debuted on #1 on the Billboard 200, selling around 180,000 units in its first week, it couldn't really spawn any huge hits. This set the stage for a disappointing flop era with her next 2 projects. Her 6th studio album Smile, released in August 2020, marked a significant commercial downturn. It debuted on #5 on the Billboard 200, making it her first album since One of the Boys in 2008 to miss the top spot. Critically, it received mixed reviews, earning a Metacritic score of 58 out of 100. Its singles largely underperformed on major charts, with Never Really Over peaking on #15, Small Talk peaking on #81, and Daisies peaking on #40 on the Hot 100. Parties in Hawaii became the biggest song from the album, reaching 647 million streams on Spotify. The album overall failed to generate the widespread buzz of her earlier career. The next album, 143, came after a 4-year hiatus in September 2024 and continued the back-to-back disappointing album run. The era started off with a controversial lead single Woman's World, which only managed to spend 1 week on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at just #63. The album opened with only 48,000 units sold in its first week and remained on the charts for just 2 weeks, making it Katy's shortest running album on the charts to date. Critical reception was overwhelmingly negative, with the album earning a Metacritic score of 37 out of 100, making it the lowest rated album of her career, with some even comparing it to AI generated music. Even though Katy is still a legend, she's on a bad run right now. Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey's career in the 1990s was defined by huge success, with a string of multi-platinum albums and chart-topping singles that dominated her status as one of the best-selling artists of all time. Her move to Virgin Records in 2001 on an $80 million contract, however, coincided with a highly publicized personal crisis. This tumultuous period culminated in the release of her 8th studio album Glitter, which served as a soundtrack to her semi-autobiographical film of the same name, which also flopped. Released on September 11, 2001, Glitter was released at an unfortunate time, as it dropped on 9/11 and in the midst of negative publicity surrounding Mariah in the media. The album debuted on #7 on the Billboard 200, with 116,000 copies sold in its first week, making it her lowest first week sales at the time. Critics universally hated the album, even though the lead single Loverboy was a decent hit, peaking on #2 in the US. It is unlistenable now. This critical and commercial failure ultimately led to Virgin Records buying out her contract and dropping her. Following the Glitter debacle, she released her 9th studio album Charm Bracelet in December 2002, just over a year later. Positioned as a more personal and introspective record, it was intended as a comeback and a return to her R&B roots. However, it too suffered from lukewarm reception, debuting at #3 on the Billboard 200, with 241,000 copies sold in its first week. While that might sound like a lot, it was disappointing at the time. It was an improvement over Glitter's initial sales, but still significantly below her pre-2001 commercial standards. Critically, it also received bad reviews, scoring a 43 out of 100 on Metacritic. Despite achieving platinum certification in the US, it failed to produce any major hits, with its lead single Through the Rain stalling at #81 on the Billboard Hot 100. The consecutive underperformance of Glitter and Charm Bracelet marked the lowest point in Mariah's legendary career. In 2005, she broke out of the challenging period of back-to-back flops when she dropped her record-breaking album The Emancipation of Mimi. Alicia Keys. Alicia Keys established herself as a formidable force in R&B and pop from her 2001 debut Songs in A Minor, which sold over 12 million copies worldwide and earned her 5 Grammy Awards. Throughout the 2000s and early 2010s, she consistently delivered chart-topping albums and hit singles, becoming the #1 RIAA certified female R&B artist of the millennium. However, by the latter half of the 2010s, her album sales began to see a big decline, setting the stage for a period of commercial struggle. Her 7th studio album Alicia, released in September 2020, debuted at #4 on the Billboard 200, selling 51,000 copies in its first week. While it marked her 8th #1 album on the Billboard R&B Albums chart, its overall commercial performance was a huge drop from her previous mainstream peaks. Even though critically it received generally positive reviews, it was released at a bad time. In the midst of a pandemic, singles like Show Me Love and Underdog didn't perform well, indicating a reduced crossover appeal compared to her peak. The follow-up album Keys, released in December 2021, continued this commercial downturn. A double album featuring originals and unlocked, Keys debuted at number 41 on the Billboard 200. This marked her lowest charting studio album debut to date, and it spent only 1 week on the chart. Critically, it received mixed reviews, with a Metacritic score of 65 out of 100. The album's singles also failed to make a significant impact on the charts, solidifying her back-to-back flops. Alicia entered her legacy artist era, where she no longer could dominate the charts. Despite her undeniable talent, she has struggled to connect with the new generation. Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake transitioned from a boy band sensation to a global pop and R&B superstar with a string of highly successful albums like Justified in 2002, Future Sex Love Sounds in 2006, and the two-part The 2020 Experience in 2013. These albums consistently debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, with The 2020 Experience selling nearly 1 million copies in its first week. His career was characterized by very high highs, making his later struggles more surprising. His 5th studio album, Man of the Woods, released in February 2018, was highly anticipated, especially as it followed a 5-year gap since his last studio effort. Despite debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200, 193,000 album equivalent units in its first week, it was a big drop from the 968,000 units of the 2020 Experience. Critically, Man of the Woods received mixed reviews, earning a Metacritic score of 55 out of 100. Many critics found its country pop direction unconvincing, and while singles like Filthy and Say Something reached the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100, the album's overall commercial longevity and cultural impact made it a flop by his standards. The next album, Everything I Thought I Was, came in March 2024 after a 6-year break and continued this commercial decline. It debuted at #4 on the Billboard 200, earning 67,000 units in its first week. This marked the lowest first week sales of his career, and for the first time, an album that missed the top 2 spots. While its lead single Selfish reached the top 20 of the Billboard Hot 100, the album's overall performance solidified a period of back-to-back commercial underperformance, with JT now struggling to recapture his early 2010s peak. Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez, a multi-hyphenated superstar, achieved huge success in music, film, and fashion throughout the late 90s and 2000s, with multiple chart-topping albums and iconic singles. Her albums like J-Lo in 2001 and This Is Me Then in 2002 were commercial powerhouses, while her career saw a lot of shifts. The performance of her albums started to decline as we went into the 2010s. Her 8th studio album, AKA, released in June 2014, marked a considerable commercial decline. It debuted at #8 on the Billboard 200, selling only 33,000 copies in its first week, which was her lowest first week sales for a studio album at the time. Critically, AKA received generally mixed reviews, as critics found it unfocused and its overall impact lacking. Despite featuring artists like Pitbull and Iggy Azalea on singles like Booty, she had a disappointing chart impact, failing to generate the kind of hits that had previously defined her career. A decade later, her 9th studio album This Is Me Now came out in February 2024, becoming the long-awaited sequel to her 2002 album This Is Me Then. It was heavily tied to her rekindled romance with Ben Affleck. Despite significant promotion, including a musical film and documentary, the album only debuted at #38 on the Billboard 200, earning just 14,000 units in its first week. This marked her lowest charting album debut and lowest first week sales of her career. The lead single, Can't Get Enough, didn't even make it on the Billboard Hot 100, further solidifying her long flop era when it comes to music. Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus, a child star who successfully transitioned into a global pop sensation, achieved massive commercial success and hit her peak with bangers in 2013, which spawned hits like Wrecking Ball and We Can't Stop. Known for her provocative image and willingness to experiment, her post-bangers musical output took a sharp turn, leading to 2 consecutive albums that, for different reasons, struggled to replicate her previous mainstream impact. Her 5th studio album, Miley Cyrus and Her Dead Pets, was independently released for free on SoundCloud in August 2015, outside of her contract with RCA Records. This unconventional release strategy meant that it had no traditional commercial chart performance. Critically, the album received mixed reviews, with a Metacritic score of 60 out of 100. While some critics liked the experimentation, others found the production jarring. Aside from its polarizing reception, nobody outside of her core fanbase even heard it, making it a flop in terms of traditional sales and chart metrics. Her sixth studio album, Younger Now, was released in September 2017 and was positioned as a return to her country roots, a big contrast to the psychedelic experimentation of Dead Pets. The album debuted on number 5 on the Billboard 200, selling just 45,000 album equivalent units, while the lead single Malibu was a moderate hit, peaking at number 10 on the Hot 100 and going double platinum. The next single failed to make a significant impact, indicating that her attempt at a rebrand and return to a more wholesome image didn't really resonate. This flop era in the mid-2010s was a low point in Miley's career, as she got back to mainstream success in the 2020s. Britney Spears. Britney Spears, a pop icon that dominated the late 1990s and 2000s, consistently delivered chart-topping albums and singles that defined an era. After a period of highly publicized personal struggles, her comeback album Circus in 2008 and its follow-up Femme Fatale in 2011 saw her regain commercial success, both debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200. However, as the 2010s progressed, her next releases would face increasing challenges, leading to a period of back-to-back underperformance. Her 8th studio album, Britney Jean, released in December 2013, was heavily marketed as her comeback. Despite this narrative, the album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, with 107,000 copies sold in its first week, marking her lowest first-week sales at the time, and her first album to miss the top 2 spots. It also had mixed reviews from critics, with a Metacritic score of 50 out of 100. Its lead single, Work Bitch, was the biggest hit, peaking at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, which was a dip from her typical lead single performance. The next album, Glory, released in August 2016. Commercially, it continued the downward trend. Glory debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, with 111 album equivalent units sold in its first week, a slight increase from Britney Jean, but still far from her peak. Its lead single, Make Me, featuring G-Eazy, peaked at number 17 on the Hot 100, but was widely criticized for its lackluster music video. While Glory was seen as a step in the right direction creatively, the lower chart debuts and lack of major hit singles indicated a sustained period where Britney struggled to reclaim her former commercial dominance. She has not released a new studio album since then. Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera rose to superstardom in the late 1990s and early 2000s, around the same time as Britney. Known for her powerful vocals, she dominated the 2000s, with multi-platinum albums like Stripped in 2002 and Back to Basics in 2006. After a period of hiatus and varied projects, her later studio albums struggled to consistently connect. Her 8th studio album, Liberation, released in June 2018, was her first album in 6 years, following Lotus in 2012, which itself had been a commercial disappointment. Liberation debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200, selling 68,000 album equivalent units in its first week. This marked her lowest charting album debut at the time. Critically, Liberation received generally positive reviews, with a Metacritic score of 71 out of 100. However, despite some critical acclaim, the album failed to produce any significant hit singles. Its lead single, Accelerate, failed to chart on the Billboard Hot 100, indicating a disconnect with the broader pop audience. Her next album, Aguilera, came in May 2022 as a Spanish-language album, her first since Mi Reflejo in 2000. While it got her a Latin Grammy Award for Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album, its commercial performance was not really there. Aguilera did not chart on the main US Billboard 200, instead peaking at number 16 on the Latin Pop Albums chart. This marked a clear commercial underperformance, following her 4-year hiatus since Liberation. She's more of a legacy artist now, not really competing on the charts, and the back-to-back flops of Liberation and Aguilera highlighted a period when the pop superstar's new material has struggled to gain significant traction in the modern era. Which artists with back-to-back flop albums did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.